It is 2 days away from the end of 2025. I need to record something that somehow sums up the year. And I need to return to the evolving set of priorities for the podcast. I will share my screen and show you a recent LinkedIn post updating you folks about that. So here I'm saying I'm modifying the Geospatial FM podcast topic profile. Number 1, data engineering for geospatial. Number 2, geospatial for world models. And there's a dig at a recent trend of foundation models and how I think, given that those are sort of in the context of LLMs, we can dispose of them, given the likes of Fei-Fei Li and Yann LeCun, 2 leaders in artificial intelligence in Silicon Valley, are advocating for world models, and both have significant, north of $1 billion funding in the case of Yann LeCun for startups to do with world models. Number 3, geospatial in prediction markets. I have another mild dig, but something related there. Spatial finance. Certainly, there's a lot of interest and various great work being done in the aid of finance companies, investors, hedge funds, commodity trading, and the likes. It's all very, very interesting. But the latest sort of interesting thing in trading and betting that everyone's looking at now is prediction markets. And geospatial actually has some applications there because there are prediction markets for weather. And you will see the relevance of that in an upcoming 3-part series with Alex Meros, where geospatial and AI and machine learning have been combined by him and others to make cheaper and more accurate, actually, weather predictions. So then we have number 4 in this context, stocks globally. So that's a reference to what was briefly the Geo 500 after I reached 500 stocks. And then following this theme of world models, I then renamed it to the World Model 500. So basically, there appear to be at least 500 stocks on 30 plus stock exchanges worldwide. That is the publicly traded footprint of our industry. So I am focusing on that because if you have a productive, a systematic, a gambling-free and a very long-term approach to the stock market, you can have very healthy financial outcomes on a sort of a lifetime, even a multi-generational basis. So somebody needs to talk about that. I am doing that. And finally, in the context of all of this, human rights outcomes matter most. So given that human rights matters the most, and if we don't pay attention to those, if all of our efforts in the end result in unnecessary deaths, in the unjust and undignified treatment of the poor, then none of those 4 preceding items are worthwhile. So this then, human rights has to be the topic of the closing episode for this year. You, for those who have been following me, will be aware that I have touched on the topic of NEOM, and especially the line in Saudi Arabia, as a ridiculous scene generally. Just from a financial perspective, put it this way, the line failed to attract any international investors. So there you go, in terms of a frank judgment of the financial viability of this project. But there's also a very significant human rights set of human rights concerns since the very beginning. And I have chosen to dig into this in this final episode to make sure that really everybody knows that I and so many others are unafraid to speak up about this, to protest honestly, in the very least. And I believe so much more than protesting needs to happen. So what is an effective way, a systematic way, a fair way, a clear way to lay out the scene for you? Well, of course, I will leverage some level-headed reporting. I'll put in front of you some useful news articles there, but also I'm going to actually utilize and show you guys how we can browse databases, a database of reports from the UN. So they have been diligent here. Thank goodness. They have sent special reporters to the field. They have access that others, including reporters, do not have by virtue of countries that joined the UN being obliged to allow special reporters access to talk to people and examine organizations and situations, which will make these host countries feel uncomfortable. This is the nature, as I understand it, of being a member of the UN. So let's then get straight into it and see what I've uncovered. So we've got an article here from Frank Gardner, a BBC security correspondent from 2020. This is a while ago, but I think this article is noteworthy. Why? Because Frank Gardner was shot in the legs and the chest 6 times by terrorists, actual terrorists, in 2004 when he was in Riyadh. They were from Al-Qaeda. But here he is, 16 years later, still going strong, reporting about security matters in Saudi Arabia. The guy's in a wheelchair. I don't know if he went in that wheelchair back to Saudi Arabia to report on this. I wouldn't doubt, though, that he did. I wouldn't be surprised. So what's the article about? Well, there's several things, including a human rights activist from Saudi, actually from the Huwaitat tribe in London, who received death threats. And this is in the context, 2 years after, in 2020, 2 years after Jamal Khashoggi was dismembered, right? So this is sort of what was ricocheting through people's minds, and now no doubt hers, when she got this death threat. And why did she get it? Well, she was speaking up about the threat of eviction that the Huwaitat tribe confronted to make way to acquire land for this NEOM project as part of Saudi's Vision 2030 program for developing the country, supposedly, through what are straightforwardly dictator vanity projects. And what clearer dictator vanity project is there than a 170-kilometer long straight line city, right? Called The Line. I mean, what a creative name. So let's go down a bit further in the article. I will, of course, put the URL in the show notes. So who's this individual here that we're looking at? This is Abdul Rahim Al Huwaidi. He was shot dead for resisting eviction from his tribal land, where the Huwaitat tribe has been living for hundreds of years. He was shot dead for refusing to give up his land to make way for this dictator vanity project. That's what this article is about. Now let's get back up to the top. I'm skipping around a bit here, but I realize that your time is precious. We're at the end of the year. You're about to celebrate New Year's Eve, so let me get to the point. So there was another article by, here we go. Perfect. So you can see the lead paragraph there. Saudi authorities have permitted the use of lethal force to clear land for a futuristic desert city being built by dozens of Western companies, an ex-intelligence officer has told the BBC. There we go. So there's the key here, and why I'm taking an interest in it, and why it even motivates me at all. Because I'm a Westerner, and my entire career since 2011 has been at a series of leading Western engineering consultancies. And of course, a whole slew of them, all of the leading ones, are delivery partners on this ridiculous project called The Line, which you can see in this graphic. A preposterous mirrored surface that is just going to collect migratory birds. It is in a migration route. It's going to collect migratory birds all year long. I mean, talk about just a middle finger to common sense. All right, so I'll skip forward a bit. So we've covered. I believe we have a basis for our curiosity is piqued here. I mean, there's a guy who's been killed unnecessarily. You know, someone has been threatened with death for speaking up for some poor defenseless tribal landowners. And then we have a video actually here of this guy who was shot dead, Abdul Rahman Al-Huwaidi, where he is testifying himself, you know, next to his house in Al-Kareba, the village, one of several villages that was cleared out by the government. Here he is, apparently the BBC reporter says, stating that the government will likely place weapons next to his dead body or strewn around the house to make false accusations about him threatening the lives of so-called security forces. So again, this URL will be in the show notes for you. So then, you know, let's skip a couple of years forward to 2024. We've got Merlin Thomas and Lara El Gibali here, where, as was sort of hinted at before, they interviewed Colonel Rabi Al-Anezi. This was a guy, and there's a photo of him further down. Here he is. This is a guy who says that he was told by the Saudi government that he had to lead a security force into Al-Kareba and other villages of the Huwaidi tribespeople to clear them out, to evict them, to make way for this project. He was told, he said, he was told by the government that if necessary, he should kill those villagers if they resisted. And here we are, you know, this is a guy who then escaped from Saudi to the UK. You know, he's sort of skipping from one hotel to the next, apparently. He also has apparently a popular YouTube channel, TikTok, the usual social media. He lives off of donations from people for his having the courage to speak out about all manner of things in Saudi Arabia. So, you know, it's turning into quite an interesting circumstance, I think we could say here. And I don't know, I mean, wouldn't it be interesting, you know, don't you think, to sort of begin to dig into this circumstance and look at, you know, what Western companies exactly are making money from building this dictator transparently. You know, there's no two ways about it. From building this dictator vanity project. Which Western companies are there? What's the nature of them? You know, are they dominant in the field? Does anybody know about them? Are they the worst of the worst, you know, just taking any project because otherwise, you know, they'll go bankrupt? Or are they at the other end of the scale? Are they the ones that really build the world across the globe, simultaneously deliver on this project, along with other very large infrastructure projects in the Western world, for example, where this kind of approach to community consultation and riding roughshod over the rights of the poor certainly would not fly in those Western companies where they possibly simultaneously deliver whilst also building this ridiculous 170-kilometer long linear city. So let's find out. Let's see, you know, what's the nature of these firms? So the way that I have chosen to investigate this, to find out, is to show you a very interesting, clunky, necessarily, of course, boring database with the most, you know, anti-TikTok front end there is, that the UN provides for the general public to see the outputs, the reports that their special reporters produce from their visits to countries around the world, investigating human rights issues like the one that we apparently have before us. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and we'll go to this database. So where were we? Let's go up to this one. All right, so the URL is spcom with a double M, reports.ohchr.org. You can see some explanatory text. Let's skip all that and just hit the communication search link top left. Eventually it should light up. Okay, so this is a communication search, and it's got things like letters of urgent appeal, which are sent to countries and companies about things that the UN has an urgent need to find out information about, to get the other side of the story, as it were, from organizations involved in what appear to be human rights issues. So let's just put NEOM, and it's got, since 2010 to now, so it's December the 16th for some reason. So it's the 30th right now, so let's put that in and hit search. Lo and behold, we have 3 pages of results, 30 results come back to us. And what do we have right there? For anyone who's in the engineering consulting industry, the name AECOM is immediately concerning. I'll tell you why. The easiest way to find out why. So this is Engineering News Record. They are a media company that ranks the dominance of engineering firms worldwide. So this here, what have we got here? The ENR 2025 top 500 design firms. All right, so this is arguably the league table for international design consultancies, the world's most dominant engineering consultancies. And lo and behold, what have we got there? Number 1, it's AECOM. AECOM, very interesting. What's next? Well, it's Jacobs, and they were number 1 last year. Very interesting, interesting circumstance that the first result that comes back in our search for the work of special reporters relating to NEOM, we have a letter of urgent appeal sent to none other than the top international engineering design firm in the world, as nominated by Engineering News Record. Well, what do you say? I reckon we better read this letter. We better read every single word of this damn letter and understand fully the circumstance that the UN has come to the CEO of AECOM asking him about. So let's check it out. Let's see what he's been asked to answer to. So what have we got here? We've got a lengthy letter, and this is a challenge for me because I've got to keep you guys coming with me through this reading. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend however long it takes. I don't care if you guys will stop reading. Somebody needs to stand up to this situation, put their neck out, and read in public these words. Read in public these words. I'll tell you why. There's many reasons why, but there's one really stands out. This database shows replies received. And what do we have here? This letter was sent 28th of April 2023. No replies have been received. There could have been an error. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the letter was sent back to the wrong address. Maybe they messed up the email response. I doubt it. Very much. I doubt it. It's quite a circumstance that the world's leading international design firm has failed to respond to a letter of urgent appeal from none other than the UN about quite a significant human rights issue on one of its probably most significant projects right now. Okay, so that's enough preamble. Let's read the letter. Reference UAOTH 35/2023, 28th of April 2023. Dear Mr. Rudd, we have the honor to address you in our capacity as special reporter on adequate housing as a component of the right to an adequate standard of living, and on the right to non-discrimination in this context. Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, Working Group on the issue of human rights in transnational corporations and other business enterprises, Special Reporter on extrajudicial, summary or arbitrary executions, Special Reporter on the promotion and protection of the right to freedom of opinion and expression, and Special Reporter on the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism pursuant to Human Rights Council resolutions 43/14, 51/8, 44/15, 44/5, 43/4, and 49/10. This is going to be a challenging read, it has to be said. This was never intended, I think, to be read out aloud, but it needs to be. It needs to be. This whole circumstance stinks, and we just have to put in the time and effort here. So it's going to be done, and thanks for your attention. We'll see, as I said, how many of you survive to the end. I'm also going to pause briefly, you can too, to get a bit of water. I'm going to need a well-lubricated throat. I'll be pausing a few times to refill this glass, so bear with me. Refill number 1 on page number 1. Okay, let's go. Paragraph number 2. We are independent human rights experts appointed and mandated by the United Nations Human Rights Council to report and advise on human rights issues from a thematic or country-specific perspective. We are part of the Special Procedures System of the United Nations, which has 56 thematic and country mandates on a broad range of human rights issues. We are sending this letter under the communications procedure of the Special Procedures of the United Nations Human Rights Council to seek clarification on information we have received. Special Procedures mechanisms can intervene directly with governments and other stakeholders, including companies, on allegations of abuses of human rights that come within their mandates by means of letters, which include urgent appeals, allegation letters, and other communications. The intervention may relate to a human rights violation that has already occurred, is ongoing, or which has a high risk of occurring. The process involves sending a letter to the concerned actors, identifying the facts of the allegation, applicable international human rights norms and standards, the concerns and questions of the mandate holders, and a request for follow-up action, which, as we established before, Mr. Rudd doesn't appear to have taken for 2 years. Communications may deal with individual cases, general patterns and trends of human rights violations, cases affecting a particular group or community, or the context of draft or existing legislation, policy or practice considered not to be fully compatible with international human rights standards. These sentences are mouthfuls. All right, in this connection, we would like to bring to your attention, as CEO of AECOM, #1 international design firm, information we have received concerning the imminent risk of execution of 3 persons and long prison convictions of 3 others in the context of alleged persecution of members of the Huaytat tribe. Messrs. Shadli Ahmed Mahmoud Abu Takika al-Huwaidi, Ibrahim Salih Ahmed Abu Khalil al-Huwaidi, and Atala Musa Muhammad al-Huwaidi have been sentenced to death. Messrs. Abdel Nasser Ahmed Mahmoud Abu Takika al-Huwaidi, Mahmoud Ahmed Mahmoud Abu Takika al-Huwaidi, and Abdallah Dakilala al-Huwaidi have been handed severe prison sentences. Excuse me, I'm an Australian. I'm doing my best here, but those names really don't roll off my tongue. I'm going to try that one again. Abdullah Dakilala al-Huwaidi have been handed severe prison sentences. Are you hearing this, Mr. Rudd? Severe prison sentences, not to mention the death sentences of those 3 others. Continuing on here. All are convicted for terrorist acts, which are allegedly baseless, of course, and they are rather being punished for merely voicing their opinion to the forced evictions of the Huaytat tribe, including on social media. Some of them have allegedly been subjected to torture and ill treatment while in custody, including prolonged solitary confinement for the purpose of extracting confessions. I'm going to pause for another sip, excuse me. The 6, along with other members of the Huaytat tribe, have been resisting evictions from their homes under the NEOM project, part of the Saudi 2030 vision. The NEOM project is being implemented allegedly without genuine consultation, free prior and informed consent, and access to effective remedies of the Huaytat tribe, whose members have been threatened with evictions from Al-Qareba, Sharma, and Gayal villages. And aside, so Al-Qareba village is where that individual was shot to death. NEOM is a project of the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which owns 100% of a closed joint stock company named NEOM. A number of international companies have been allegedly involved in different stages of the development of the NEOM project. For example, AECOM. Okay, so reference is made to the previous communication AL-SAU 11/2020 sent by Special Procedures mandate holders to the government of Saudi Arabia concerning the alleged arbitrary killing of Mr. Abdul Rahim bin Ahmed Mahmoud al-Huwaidi on 13th of April 2020, who had been protesting evictions carried out in Al-Qareba village due to the NEOM project. And, this is a reference to what Frank Gardner of the BBC wrote about in this article. And I have, of course, gone and gotten AL-SAU 11/2020, another letter of urgent appeal from the 10th of August 2020, 4 months after that shooting, they reference here in this later letter of urgent appeal. This is the UN. There are machinations, it is bureaucratic, but it's great to have this paper trail once you gain the patience to navigate it all. Okay, so where did we get to? Al Qurayba village due to the NEOM project. The special reporters raised concern about the forced eviction of the Waitat tribe, of which they were informed on the 1st of January 2020, as well as the raiding of the homes of residents opposing the eviction by members of the Saudi Special Forces in March 2020. According to the information received, number 1, persecution of Waitat tribe members resisting the NEOM project. Members of the Waitat tribe who have resisted their forced eviction and voiced their opposition to the NEOM project have been declared terrorists accused of posing a threat to national security. Since 2017, at least 47 members of the Waitat tribe have been arrested and detained, and many of them are being prosecuted under the 2017 law on combating terrorism crimes and its financing. At least 3 persons have been sentenced to death and are facing an imminent threat of execution, while at least 3 others have been handed severe prison sentences. There is allegedly no factual basis for the terrorism charges against them, and instead they have been singled out due to voicing their opposition against the forced evictions of the Waitat tribe. So here I am, naturally, the first response of us all must be to use our power to voice opposition whilst we can. Let's bring the pressure. We enjoy the right to do it. Let's make sure we exercise that right and look at the consequences of those who have tried, who've showed the utmost bravery, knowing that they don't enjoy that right. So here we are. Here I am doing, what anyone should. So let's continue. I have to say I'm doing my best here, but this letter doesn't roll off the tongue. And I'm sorry for sometimes garbling these sentences. Excuse me, I'll also take another sip. Okay, number 2, the case of Mr. Shadli Al-Hawaidi. On the 24th of November 2020, Mr. Shadli Al-Hawaidi was arrested at his family farm by the General Directorate of Investigations, or GID, and the Special Emergency Forces. He was allegedly not presented with an arrest warrant at the time of arrest, nor provided with any information related to the reasons for his arrest. After his arrest, Mr. Shadli Al-Hawaidi was transferred to the Al Tarafiyah prison in Al-Qasim and subsequently charged with having the intention of destabilizing the security and stability of the society and the state, as well as supporting people with a terrorist ideology who seek to disturb public order and endanger its national unit. He was then transferred to the Dawan prison in Jeddah, which is run by the Saudi Presidency of State Security, or SSP. It is alleged that, while detained, Mr. Shadli Al-Hawaidi was subjected to acts of torture and ill-treatment as a means of coercing a confession, including beatings, electrocutions, being forced to stand on one leg in the sun all day, wonderful, in the beating sun in Saudi Arabia, sleep deprivation, denial of access to care, and prolonged solitary confinement. Additionally, following his arrest, Mr. Shadli Al-Hawaidi was allegedly denied access to the legal representation for 3 months and contact with his family for 4 months. Delightful stuff. On the 5th of August 2022, Mr. Shadli Al-Hawaidi was sentenced to death by the Specialized Criminal Court, or SCC. The sentence was then upheld by the Specialized Criminal Court of Appeal, or SCCA, on the 23rd of January 2023. Are we up to number 4 now? The case of Mr. Ibrahim Al-Hawaidi. Mr. Ibrahim Al-Hawaidi was arrested in early November 2020. He was charged with having the intention of destabilizing the security and stability of the society and the state, as well as using social media to harm national unity. On the 5th of August 2022, he was sentenced to death by the SCC. The sentence was upheld by the SCCA on the 23rd of January 2023. And aside here, by now, I hope Mr. Rudd's eyes are wide. I hope he's really, bolt upright at his desk, whatever his desk as the CEO of AECOM looks like. I really hope he's paying attention by this point in this letter addressed to him. So let's continue on reading what this powerful individual in our profession, the global engineering consulting profession, what this powerful individual was delivered by the UN. Are we up to number 5? The case of Mr. Atala al-Huwaidi. Maybe it's number 6 now, I've lost count. On the 4th of January 2021, following news reports that some Huwaitat protesters had been designated as terrorists by the authorities, Mr. Atala al-Huwaidi handed himself over to the Mabahith, the Mabahith office in Jeddah, and was subsequently arrested. He was later transferred to the GID prison in Tabuk and then to Al Tarafiyah prison in Al Qasim. While detained, it is reported that he was held in solitary confinement and subjected to torture as a means of coercing him to confess that he, along with other members of the Huwaitat tribe, had the intention of destabilizing the security and stability of the society and the state. Along with Mr. Shadli al-Huwaidi and Mr. Ibrahim al-Huwaidi, Mr. Atala al-Huwaidi was sentenced to death by the SCC on the 5th of August 2022, which was then upheld by the SCCA on the 23rd of January 2023. I give up counting. The next is the case of Mr. Abdel Nasser al-Huwaidi on the 18th of October 2020. Mr. Abdel Nasser al-Huwaidi was arrested by the GID and Special Emergency Forces while en route to Diba Hospital. Following his arrest, Mr. Abdel Nasser al-Huwaidi was transferred to the Mabahith prison in Tabuk, where he remained for approximately a month before being transferred to the SSP-run Deban prison in Jeddah. It is reported that while detained, he was held in solitary confinement for 4 months and subjected to psychological and physical acts of torture, allegedly as a means of coercing a confession to the charges brought against him. Such charges include inciting public opinion against the Crown Prince and committing a terrorist offence. Following an initial hearing in July 2022 and 4 subsequent hearings, Mr. Abdel Nasser al-Huwaidi was sentenced to 27 years imprisonment by the SCC. Moving on, the case of Mr. Mahmoud al-Huwaidi. On the 24th of November 2020, Mr. Mahmoud al-Huwaidi was arrested alongside Mr. Shadli and Mr. Abdel al-Huwaidi while on his family's farm in the Al Karaiba region. Again, that's where that guy was shot to death. Mr. Mahmoud al-Huwaidi was first taken to the GID prison in Tabuk before being transferred to the SSP-run Deban prison in Jeddah. During this time, Mr. Mahmoud al-Huwaidi was allegedly subjected to acts of psychological and physical torture, including being held in solitary confinement for a period of 6 months. I mean, God, he's lucky he survived. It is reported that Mr. Mahmoud al-Huwaidi was charged with inciting public opinion and harming national unity in relation to concerns raised regarding NEOM. The NEOM project, and the reported forced eviction of the Huwaitat tribe. Mr. Mahmoud al-Huwaidi was also charged with being in possession of a photo of a dead terrorist, in this case his brother, Abdul Rahim al-Huwaidi, who was the subject of the above-mentioned earlier communication, AL-SAU 11/2020. Let us never forget AL-SAU 11/2020. All right, following an initial hearing in July 2021. Yes, sorry, it just has to be said. So this guy was fucking arrested for holding a photo of his deceased brother who was falsely accused of being a terrorist. The heartlessness of it all. The savage heartlessness. Okay, so following an initial hearing in July 2021 and 4 subsequent hearings. I'm sorry, no, I have to continue on there. I'm sorry. So Mr. Paul Rudd, this leader of the world's best engineering consultancy, is receiving this letter. I hope the guy actually goddamn read it. And this is the sort of thing that essentially the UN has observed he has involved his company in. Okay? All right, let's continue. Following an initial hearing in July 2021 and 4 subsequent hearings, Mr. Mahmoud al-Huwaidi was sentenced to 35 years in prison for terrorism-related charges. Yes, the terrorism of holding in your wallet a photo of your dead brother falsely accused of being a terrorist. Yes, terrorism-related charges. Moving on, the case of Mr. Abdullah al-Huwaidi. Mr. Abdullah al-Huwaidi, a former employee in the municipality of Al Karaiba, was arrested by SSP agents on the 24th of November 2020 alongside Mr. Shadli and Mr. Mahmoud al-Huwaidi. The charges against Mr. Abdullah al-Huwaidi include A. defaming the symbols of the state with the intent of destabilizing the security of society, amounting to an act of terrorism. B. Providing assistance to those who seek to disturb public order and destabilize the security of society and the stability of the state by following their online accounts and providing them, yes, just following them on Twitter or whatever, and providing them with information affecting the security of the homeland through well-known social networking sites. C. Possessing a machine gun without a license. Goodness. D. Inciting others to carry out terrorist acts. And E. Spreading rumors through his writings on social media. Continuing on the 31st of January 2022, Mr. Abdullah Al-Huwaidi was sentenced by the SCC to 16 years in prison. The sentence was increased to 50 years on appeal in September 2022. Then the letter goes on to describe the NEOM project. So let's see what the UN, in all of its polite and diplomatic language, what the UN says about this dictator vanity project. So, NEOM is one of the Saudi 2030 vision projects described as an accelerator of human progress that will embody the future of innovation in business, livability, and sustainability. It aims at developing a planned 170-kilometer long linear smart city called The Line, which will be home to 9 million people in Tabuk province in northwestern Saudi Arabia, which will be powered by renewable energy sources. Of course it will. NEOM is a project of the Saudi Public Investment Fund, which owns 100% of a closed joint stock company called NEOM. A number of international companies have been allegedly involved in different stages of the development of the NEOM project, including AECOM, ADAS Limited, Air Products and Chemicals Inc., Bechtel Global Corporation, Boston Consulting Group, Bureau Proberts, China State Construction Engineering Corp., FCC Construction SA, Hyundai Engineering and Construction Co. Limited, Keller, Laboratory for Visionary Architecture, McKinsey & Co., Morphosis, Oliver Wyman LLC, Samsung C&T Corporation, Solar Water, Van Berkel, NBOS UN, Studio BV, and Zaha Hadid Architects. The acquisition of land for the NEOM project has threatened to displace an estimated 20,000 members of the Huaytat tribe from the villages of Al-Qurayba, Sharma and Gayal, who have lived in the northwest Tabuk region for centuries, without genuine consultation, their free, prior and informed consent, and without effective access to remedies. You know, at this point, I've said it several times, but at this point, you know, the CEO of AECOM should be making phone calls. He should be requesting emergency meetings. There should be a wholesale review of the company's involvement in a project which could very severely damage its reputation and the prospects for its participation in future projects around the world. This is where we're at. This is the meaning of this letter so far for this individual. Yet he didn't even respond. Yes, this is the state of the profession, of the engineering consulting profession. The leader of it, in a sense, didn't even bother to respond. Anyway, I said we would go all the way through. I need to refill my glass. It is quite a task to read this out. I'm running out of water in this bottle. I'll have to go for a refill of the bottle even. All right, we got to effective access to remedies. Let's continue. During the initial stages of the project, local residents were assured that they would be involved in the development process. However, inevitably, in January 2020, the residents of Al-Qurayba, Sharma and Gayal villages were informed that they must leave their land or face eviction. A large portion of the Huaytat tribe have refused to vacate and as a result have faced various forms of persecution, including destruction of property, interruptions in the provision of electricity, unexplained fires, job relocation, harassment, threats of kidnappings. Nevertheless, they have continued to publicly oppose. What an act of bravery. What an act of bravery. An ancient tribe, by all accounts. Hundreds of years of connection to their land. You know, bless them. Bless these people. They bravely stood up to this harassment. Nevertheless, they have continued to publicly oppose the evictions through campaigns, petitions, and social media broadcasts. And as we have seen, the results were mortal in nature. So Saudi authorities have allegedly offered financial incentives to government-appointed tribal sheikhs and other community leaders on the condition that they condemn resistance to the NEOM project. During a meeting with the Tabuk Emirate, these same officials are said to have been offered between 100,000 and 300,000 Saudi riyals, or US dollars 27,000 to 80,000 to organize an event at which they would condemn the actions of Abdul Rahim al-Huwaidi and other protesters. The guy that was shot. Yeah, condemn him. While some residents are prepared to move, the authorities have rejected their request to be resettled in nearby villages and have instead offered compensation to those willing to relocate to more remote parts of the country. Yes, dispense with them. Rid this land of this filth. However, the compensation policy is seemingly inconsistent and has been unequally applied, with some residents reportedly offered 620,000 Saudi riyals or 165,000 US dollars, and others as little as 17,000 Saudi riyals or 4,500 US dollars. Persons that accept any form of compensation are, of course, required to sign waivers absolving the government of any charge of forced displacement. The conniving, chicanerous little pieces of cancer. All right, the majority of those displaced have resettled between Tabuk and Duba, yet they remain at risk of further displacement. In July 2022, the residents of Magna, a coastal village inhabited by members of the Huaytat, Bani Yatia, and Juhayna tribes, were deported to the cities of Hakil and Tabuk. In these larger cities, many have been forced to live in poorer neighborhoods due to the inadequate compensation received for their expropriation due to the NEOM project. While we do not wish to prejudge the accuracy of these allegations, we express serious concern at the allegations and call on your company to take all necessary measures to ensure that the rights of those voicing their protest against the planned forced evictions under the NEOM project are being respected. We would like to underline that your company and its affiliates should act in accordance with guiding principles on business and human rights, implementing the UN Protect, Respect and Remedy Framework, endorsed by the Human Rights Council in its Resolution 17/4 of the 16th of June 2011, and respect human rights by A, avoiding, causing or contributing to adverse human rights impacts through their own activities and addressing such impact when they occur, and B, seeking to prevent or mitigate adverse human rights impacts that are directly linked to their operations, products or services by their business relationships, even if they have not contributed to those impacts. And that is from Guiding Principle 13. As set forth in the UN Guiding Principles, in order to meet their responsibility to respect human rights, business enterprises should have a policy commitment to meet their responsibility to respect human rights, B, a human rights due diligence process to identify, prevent, mitigate, and account for how they address their impacts on human rights, and C, processes to enable the remediation of any adverse human rights impacts they cause or to which they contribute. While the government of Saudi Arabia is ultimately responsible for ensuring that members of the Huaytat tribe who have been resisting their evictions under the NEOM project are not persecuted in violation of national and international human rights law frameworks, business enterprises such as your company also have an independent responsibility to respect all human rights of the affected communities and protesters. We've reached a milestone. We're at page 8. The end is in sight. I'm going to have a sip. And you'll be happy to see it's not very strong alcohol quite yet. It's just water. Who knows how we'll go in the remaining 2 pages. Okay, page 8. The United Nations Guiding Principles require that business enterprises involve meaningful consultation with potentially affected groups and other relevant stakeholders. Assessments of adverse human rights impacts should be conducted at regular intervals, including prior to major decisions, for example, a decision to expand production or changes in the operation, in response to or anticipation of changes in the operating environment, for example, rising social tensions relating to Guiding Principle 18. In addition, the Guiding Principle 19 notes that business enterprises should prevent and mitigate adverse human rights impacts and take appropriate action in this regard. The commentary on this principle notes that if the business enterprise has leverage to prevent or mitigate the adverse impact, it should exercise it. So what is that getting at straightforwardly? Well, they were handed a delivery partner role on the line. This gives them a significant amount of leverage, along with the other three or four massive, influential global engineering consultancy also handed delivery partner roles on the line. The leverage they have, for example, banding together and threatening to leave the project, is significant, right? Significant. So that's why the UN has included that sentence. Let's get back to it. I might have to take a run up here. In addition, the Guiding Principle 19 notes that business enterprises should prevent and mitigate adverse human rights impacts and take appropriate action in this regard. The commentary on this principle notes that if the business enterprise has leverage to prevent or mitigate the adverse impact, it should exercise it. Furthermore, the guiding principles also note that in order for grievances to be addressed early and remediated directly, business enterprises should establish or participate in effective operational level grievance mechanisms for individuals and communities who may be adversely impacted. And this is Guiding Principle 29. One of the purposes behind this provision of this is to make it possible for grievances once identified to be addressed and for adverse impacts to be remediated early and directly by the business enterprise, thereby preventing harms from compounding and grievances from escalating. In addition, we wish to express, I'm sorry, I'm going to take another sip. All right. Proud to be reading this in public. Maybe it's the only time it ever will be. It needs to be done, as I hope is perfectly apparent. I'm going to take another sip. My goodness. Moving on, in addition, we wish to express our serious concern about the forced eviction and displacement of the Huaytat residents of Al Qareba, Sharma and Gayal villages due to the NEOM project without genuine consultation, free, prior and informed consent, effective access to redress and remedies, and adequate compensation. The right to adequate housing enshrined in Article 25(1) of the UDHR guarantees that must be the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So yeah, Article 25, I guess Part 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights guarantees the right to live somewhere in security, peace and dignity, and to possess a degree of security of tenure, which guarantees legal protection against forced eviction, harassment and other threats. We wish to recall that the former Commission on Human Rights earlier affirmed that the practice of forced eviction constitutes a gross violation of human rights, and that's Resolution 1993/77. Similarly, the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights has declared that forced evictions are prima facie incompatible with the requirements of the Covenant and can only be justified in the most exceptional circumstances. So probably not dictator vanity projects. Yeah, the most exceptional circumstances and in accordance with the relevant principles of international law. Furthermore, a number of procedural protections apply in relation to forced evictions, including an opportunity for genuine compensation with those affected. So, not barging into a vulnerable tribal community behind the barrel of a gun, and killing people, So, so let's take another run up here. The Covenant, and can only be justified in the most exceptional circumstances and in accordance with the relevant principles of international law. Furthermore, a number of procedural protections apply in relation to forced evictions, including an opportunity for genuine consultation with those affected, adequate and reasonable notice for all affected persons prior to the scheduled date of eviction, and provision of legal remedies. I need another sip. CESCR General Comment Number 24 in 2017 also states that extraterritorial obligation to protect requires states, parties, to take steps to prevent and redress infringements of covenant rights that occur outside their territories due to the activities of business entities over which they can exercise control, especially in cases where the remedies available to victims before the domestic courts of the state where the harm occurs are unavailable or ineffective. The word extraterritorial, and the context of this letter being delivered to AECOM, which is based in America, comes across to me as a reference to the government of the United States, which has jurisdiction over the headquarters of AECOM, possibly taking an interest in what local AECOM staff in Saudi Arabia may have observed, which accords with the observations made in this letter of urgent appeal by the UN. Continue on, in view of the urgency of the matter, we would appreciate a response, yes, which has not been delivered 2 years later by the CEO of AECOM. In view of the urgency of the matter, we would appreciate a response on the initial steps taken by your company to respect the rights of the above-mentioned persons, as well as communities affected in the context of the NEOM project, in compliance with international instruments. As it is our responsibility under the mandates provided to us by the Human Rights Council to seek to clarify all cases brought to our attention, we would be grateful for your observations on the following matters. Number 1, please provide any additional information and/or comments you may have on the above-mentioned allegations. Number 2, please provide information as to whether your company has undertaken human rights due diligence steps as set out in the United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights to identify, prevent, mitigate, and account for human rights abuses caused by or contributed to through your own activities or directly linked to your operations, products, or services by your business relationships. This includes the exercise of adequate oversight and human rights due diligence to business partners and any other non-state or state entity directly linked to your business operations, products, or services in order to prevent and mitigate impact on the enjoyment of human rights of communities affected by the NEOM project, including the obligation to obtain the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples, yes, Indigenous peoples, prior to the approval of business activities affecting their land use. I believe what I just read was a possibly 15-row single sentence. Sorry on the UN's behalf for that. I reckon I nailed it too, by the way. All right. Maybe I shouldn't be cracking jokes here, but Jesus Christ, I need to. We all need to stay fucking sane. And I also make no apologies for swearing. Jesus fucking Christ. What the fuck is this, man? What the fuck is this? Look, I'm a 42-year-old man. I'm 15 years into this career. I've worked in 5 countries in, some of the best engineering consultancies around the world. Here I am. It's 20 minutes to midnight on December the 30th. It's New Year's Eve tomorrow. And here I am, dressed up for you guys, reading into the goddamn camera on my laptop, this letter that effectively the entire industry has failed to respond to. Here I am. Here we are, soldiering through. All done for continuing to watch. Let's see what happens next. Okay. I forgot what we got up to. I think it was item 3. Please explain what monitoring and evaluation systems your company, AECOM, has in place to ensure the effectiveness of human rights due diligence steps taken to mitigate and prevent human rights abuses, including forced evictions, as described in this letter, and other related human rights violations throughout your business operations, products, or services. Item number 4. Please explain what measures have been adopted to ensure that staff of your company, AECOM, as well as your business partners, have adequate awareness, knowledge, and tools to identify and report human rights abuses, including those alleged in the present letter, throughout your operations, products, or services. Item number 5, please explain what concrete steps have been taken by your company to exercise leverage. This important concept comes up again. To exercise leverage in line with the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights in your business relationships to prevent and mitigate human rights abuses committed in relation to the NEOM project. I mean, from the perspective of the workers, heaven forbid that I should be perceived as elevating the needs of those above these poor Huaytat tribe members, But just as an aside, for heaven's sake, the workers employed by AECOM and the other engineering consultancies delivering on this project, they want to have mechanisms at these companies that employ them when these human rights concerns come up. And I speak from personal experience. They need the protection of these processes to do their part in protecting these people. If, for example, this CEO, Mr. Rudd, CEO of AECOM, fails, for example, for 2 years to respond to nothing less than a letter of urgent appeal from the UN. This whole circumstance is laughable, needless to say. Okay, So we were at item 5, business and human rights in your business relationships to prevent and mitigate human rights abuses committed in relation to the NEOM project. Item number 6, please prevent, excuse me, well, yes, that's a Freudian slip because Jesus Christ, that's what we're trying to do here. Prevent this circumstance and prevent any more people being killed. Needless to say that, you know, these 3 men on death row should have their sentences commuted, for heaven's sake. Okay. Item number 6, please provide information on whether your company has reported any such alleged human rights abuses in the present letter to relevant authorities, including in countries where your company is incorporated or domiciled. And this relates to that final paragraph on page 7, where, you know, the jurisdiction of the headquarters of AECOM is the United States, you know, so they can report things to the US government, surely, and have them use their relationship and their leverage with the Saudi leadership, which is significant, right? You know how close, you know, they're like 2 peas in a pod. You know, the Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, and certain members of the leadership of the US government. Put it that way. Not to mention well-known business figures in the US, right? So there's plenty of potential for leverage to be used there. I'm going to read item 6 again. Item 6, please provide information on whether your company has reported any such alleged human rights abuses in the present letter to relevant authorities, including in countries where your company is incorporated or domiciled. Moreover, what steps has your company taken or is considering to take to avoid potential complicity, yes, complicity, in such alleged business-related human rights abuses? The word complicity has come up. This is in the back of all of our minds. Who's complicit in what here? By not even goddamn responding to this letter. You know, what is that an admission of? What is that an admission of? Is it an admission that no matter what the response is that you give, it's not going to be adequate? You know, that's a pretty fucking sorry and sad state of affairs. You know, why should I dress up? You know, why should I put in an effort to go to work for you and your company if you can't even respond to this, can't even offer us the dignity, you know, that we as a society have made enough progress that we can just be fucking honest and act, you know, with the required level of urgency when a situation like this occurs. None of that is happening. And that's why I'm sitting here reading this goddamn letter. Okay, item number 7. Why am I in the position of coming across as disciplining effectively the leader of our profession? How have things gotten to this stage? It's shocking. It really is. Really is. Item number 7. Another sip of water. Another sip of water. All right. Number 7. Please advise how your company provides for or cooperates in the remediation of adverse impact on human rights. Jesus. Boy, would I have loved to have read the reply. Because that right there, after bitter experience, I across several countries, including I've done my tour of duty in the Middle East, in Kuwait and Qatar, and I know that there are no leaders, practically no leaders in the engineering profession or engineering business that are delivering on projects there that would have a satisfactory answer to item 7. And so I'm going to read it again. Item 7, please advise how your company provides for or cooperates in the remediation of adverse impact on human rights. You know, if that occurred, none of those businesses would be able to operate there anymore. This may include establishing or participating in effective operational level grievance mechanisms. Let me tell you from personal experience, once you start to use those naively, you know, in good faith, you will be victimized. You will be gaslit. And that happened to me. It happened to me at AMEC Foster Wheeler and another company, which for legal reasons, I've been told by a lawyer that costs $350 an hour, I cannot name. This is the state of things. This is the goddamn fucking pitiful state of our fucking profession. Item 8. Please provide information, if any, on cooperation your company may have had with civil society actors, including those working outside of Saudi Arabia. and/or relevant state authorities to ensure that your company's grievance mechanism are aligned with the UN guiding principles on business and human rights to address such business-related human rights abuses. All right, well, yeah, very pointed questions there. Gotta love it. The UN's doing their job. We're in the final stretch now. Page 10. Let's go. Actually, page 9, but that's basically the most of it. All right, okay. We may publicly express our concerns in the near future as, in our view, the information upon which the press release will be based is sufficiently reliable to indicate a matter warranting immediate attention. We also believe that the wider public should be alerted to the potential implications of the above-mentioned allegations. The press release will indicate that we have been in contact with you, yes, AECOM, to clarify the issues in question. We would appreciate receiving a letter or a response rather within 60 days. 60 days, 2 months. You know, this was back in 2023. It's now 2025. No response. No response. No response. What does that say about the humanity? The simple humanity. I mean, I don't want to come across as dramatic, but fuck, man. It's pretty fucking simple shit here. You know, they haven't responded. Past this delay, this communication and any response received from your company will be made public via the communications reporting website, the one that I just showed you guys to get to this letter. They will also subsequently be made available in the usual report to be presented to the Human Rights Council. It looks like we're at the final paragraph. Please be informed that a letter on this subject has also been sent to Saudi Arabia to those business enterprises that are involved in the NEOM project, including ADAS Limited, Air Products and Chemicals Inc., Bechtel Global Corporation, Boston Consulting Group, Bureau Proberts, China State Construction Engineering Corporation, FCC Construction SA, Hyundai Engineering and Construction Co. Limited, Keller, Laboratory for Visionary Architecture, I just love that name, McKinsey & Co., Morphosis. Apparently, they were the ones originally responsible for that ridiculously long, 170-kilometer straight line city. Yeah, Morphosis. It metastasized from Morphosis. NEOM Company, Oliver Wyman LLC, Samsung C&T Corporation, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, Solar Water, Van Berkel, NBOS UN Studio BB, and Zaha Hadid Architects, as well as to the home states of all involved companies: Australia, China, Germany, the Netherlands, Republic of Korea, Spain, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the United States of America. Please accept, dear Mr. Rudd, the assurances of our highest consideration. Damn, that was a burn. God, imagine being burnt by the UN. Jesus. Okay, so it's from Balakrishnan Rajagopal, who is special reporter on adequate housing as a component of the right to an adequate standard of living and on the right to non-discrimination in this context. It is also from Matthew Gillett, who is vice chair of the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. Furthermore, it is from Pichamon Yuafantong, chair reporter of the Working Group on the issue of human rights and transnational corporations and other business enterprises. I'm just thinking as I read this, which of them was responsible for the wording of some of these sentences. It was, yeah, well done by them all. Okay, Morris Tidball Binns, special reporter on extrajudicial summary and arbitrary executions. Imagine having that as your remit, man. Irene Khan, special reporter on the promotion and protection of the right to freedom of opinion and expression. And lastly, Fianuala Ni Ailan. Goodness, I guess she is Irish. I've messed that up, I'm sorry. Special reporter, last of all, on the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms while countering terrorism. All right, you guys have made it to the end of the letter. You know, probably the only letter of urgent appeal from the UN ever read aloud in public. God bless you all. All right. So are we at an end? I think, you know, we've been going for an hour and 7 minutes. I think I can say we've done pretty well, for even if it's just that if I leave things here for an end of year episode, maybe returning to my observation before that the point of this podcast, in the end, if it is anything, is about human rights outcomes of all companies in the World Model 500, formerly known as the Geo 500, formerly known as the Geospatial Index. For heaven's sake, it goes without saying that the activities of all of these companies would be to bring a vast and intolerable indignity upon us all if the first thing they did was went out and turned a blind eye to a totalitarian dictatorship building dictator vanity projects on the blood and bones of unjustly murdered, executed, vulnerable tribal landowners. So there is no point in me maintaining the World Model 500 and reporting to you guys on the investment outcomes for all of those companies and encouraging you guys to participate in the stock market, because if you don't, you're going to fail to keep up with inflation. You're going to fail to keep up with productivity gains, and it's all for naught. All of that messaging is for nothing and is pointless if, in the end, I'm talking to you guys about companies that kill people or who don't care about using their leverage when they observe people have been unjustly killed to make way for the projects they're delivering on. That has to be the message. And this is the way that I have chosen to deliver it and to make sure that the year concludes with that message being loud and clear. I thought I was done, but as with all dramatic stories where there's an arc and you have to, of course, tie up loose ends, right? And there are a couple that come to mind. So towards the end of the letter, these special reporters informed the CEO of AECOM that regardless of his choice whether or not to respond, they would be releasing a report to the public about the contents of the letter, basically. So I just wanted to, I will flash up on the screen for you and put in the show notes, of course, an example of what the UN ended up publishing. But there's another, even more interesting in this context of the letter being delivered to the CEO of a company, even more interesting loose end to tie up. So I think we'll start with that one. Let me share my screen again. So we will start with this news article from Business Insider. Energy CEO said he cancelled a $100 million contract with NEOM when he realized the Saudis were bulldozing villages to make space. What is the date of this? May the 10th, 2024. So it's about a year after that letter was sent. And it mentions here the CEO's name is Malcolm Orr, said he pulled out of a NEOM contract because of alleged Saudi human rights abuses. So why is this a loose end to tie up? Well, as was mentioned in the letter, if we do a quick search, solar, there we go. Solar Water is one of the companies that the UN mentioned to Mr. Rudd were involved along with his in delivery of this project. And let's go back to the database that I told you guys all about. I think we'll go to page 3. How about that, given I think it's arranged alphabetically. And we're in the S's here, Saudi Solar Water. There we go. So Solar Water received the same letter. So this is a loose end worth tying up because, and interestingly, it's addressed not to Malcolm Orr, but to Mr. Reevely. And it's also 10 pages long. So, we can just assume, it's got the same list of questions at the end. It's the same letter. So how's that for a contrast, right? I'll stop sharing my screen. One must deliver these points with impact. How's this for a contrast? One CEO ignores the letter, it would appear, doesn't have the courage to respond. Another CEO of a very small company has the courage to essentially perform, in a business and commercial sense, the suicidal act of cancelling a $100 million project. This is a small company, right? It would have been essentially a death sentence for his company. But because Malcolm Orr has principles and courage and is a real leader, he chose to exit that contract. Okay? It's one of the loose ends. So what's the other one? I am going to start showing my screen again. I mean, I'm not going to read it out to you guys, but just to show you, this is one of the media outputs from the UN about what they discovered as outlined in that letter, and as they said to the recipient and to all recipients, this is them going ahead and in May, so only about a week later, really, given that it was the letter of urgent appeal was sent at the end of April 2023. So a week later, it seems, you know, they sent out something to the media as really a summary. If we do a search of this article for AECOM, there is nothing. So there must have been further articles or press releases or reports published for public consumption, because they did say in the letter that companies like AECOM, indeed all of the companies, would be mentioned, and the public would be informed that they had received these letters, and you know that these allegations that the UN viewed as being credible enough to associate these companies with these findings. So those are the two loose ends that I wanted to just splice on for your. For those who were wondering, you know, what some of the outcomes might have been. And let's once again just elevate and celebrate Malcolm Orr, the CEO of Solar Water, this small British new energy startup, really, who had the courage to stand up for what was right and exited his company from a $100 million contract, a very significant one. But nevertheless, he put above all else what was right.